Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, once again we have an opportunity to speak and share some ideas with a beloved brother in South Africa, Brother Ayoob Karim. Thank you for joining us, brother. I really appreciate you. You remind me when I listen to your lectures, you remind me of a young stallion in the spring,
Okay.
ready to re-
Ready to go.
ready to go. That's right. Alhamdulillah. Now, I'm having several conversations with several people, and my purpose is to try and remove what has overshadowed Al Islam and come to us as the vain traditions of those imaginations that have gone before us, and those scholars who've either purposely misled us or have done so unwillingly or willingly and unknowingly, or whatever the case might be. Um, the the thing that I'm looking to do is erase that shadow and clarify the picture through conversation. Now, many people, I including myself, we like to give lectures and follow a systematic approach that's going to logically and rationally define terms and then lead us to certain deductive reasoning and conclusions that are pretty safe to make. But in conversation, that's a different approach. You see, a conversation between old fellas like us is for the benefit of the youngsters who are listening in, and also for our own benefit, because our colleagues sometimes listen in, and if we need to be corrected, hey, I'm ready. Please, somebody correct me. Okay, I do not want to stand on the wrong side of Allah or the death angel when that day comes. You see, so let's stand ready to be corrected, and so that's what we're doing. We're sort of removing the shadow, trying to get involved in this corrective process so that what is truly Islamic or is supposed to us, should have come to us as Al Islam is seen very clearly. And conversations help us to do that, because when we're having a conversation, other people are listening in and are saying, gosh, I didn't know that. And then they say, oh, why did you say that? So there's a give and take, and there's a flux, not just between you and me, but between us and the listeners. And that flux is unseen. And so I want to honor that exchange as well. So that's why I have these conversations, because in the old days when we didn't have television and radios and hand phones and all that sort of thing, what would go on in the evening? You sit around and you listen to the old fellas talk, and somebody would tell the story. And then the youngsters would get involved and they'd be listening and they'd say, "Oh, Grandpa, what about that? What? You're no, So there's an inclusive process going on, and this is missing from Al Islam, or is missing from the Muslim venues that I've attended to. We have these formal Q&As. Okay, well, that's kind of formal. I prefer to be informal, and I prefer to approach uh, Islam the same way that the Prophet approached it in Medina. You see, and I'm bringing us to our subject matter now, inshallah. See, when people went to what they called the Masjid in Medina, they went to the Prophet's home. That's where he lived, to my understanding. Okay, and he lived there with whatever family he had there, his wives or whatever the case might be, and they were all lined up, and along with the cattle and the camels and whoever else was in that courtyard early on, and they would sort of gather. What, for an informal Q&A? I don't think so. They gathered for a meeting of with a specific purpose in mind. And what was that purpose? Well, they invited the Prophet to go there. You see, when the Prophet made hijrah, to my understanding, he knew where he was going. We wasn't quite sure how he was going to get there, but he knew where he was going. There's a lot of people who want to make hijrah today, but they have no idea where they want to go. And that's not quite the sunnah. Okay. So um, the Prophet knew where he was going, and he was invited because the Medina milieu had problems. All right. It was a multicultural, multi religious sort of pseudo theocratic state coming out of this Jahiliyyah, whatever they call it. And they needed some order because the men were killing each other over all these stupid Arab ideas, and having to do with pride and dignity, and this sense of false purpose. You see that's. Anyway, the Prophet was there to govern. He was there to govern. He wasn't there just to escape what was going on in Medina. He was there to set an example and to govern. And when people went to his house, which I think we mistakenly called the Masjid, or maybe not, I don't know, they went there to hear the latest news. It's kind of like the TV broadcast, okay? They went there to get the latest propaganda. Now, fortunately, because the prophet is the prophet, you see, he's not giving out false propaganda. He's giving out real propaganda, true propaganda. Okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. We know, however, that propaganda, like anything else in the earth, can be abused. And it is abused, and it's currently being abused all over the world with all these false ideas. Now, everybody likes to say, well, that's Hitler and Himmler who brought that on. But no, no, the British were doing this for hundreds of years. And where did they learn it? They learned it from Caesar, because Caesar's the one admitted in his own annals that he did it. So you repeat the lie loud enough and frequently enough, and everyone believes is the truth over a period of time. And the Jesuits know that it only takes 3 generations to completely convert a group of people to their way of thinking, or at least to favoring their presence, even though everyone knows that they're the enemy of mankind. Whoa, am I stepping on some toes? Of course I am. That's what I'm here to do. This is part of the erasure process. Let's get rid of all this fog and let's see things clearly. And you have to do that by speaking the truth. Alhamdulillah. Now, my question to you, I'm trying to formulate it still, is is what is this
Take
thing?
your time.
What is
Take
this called Masjid, dear brother Ayoob? What is this thing called the Masjid? What is this thing called Jum'ah that's now so intimately associated with the Masjid? My own impression, reading the little bit that's been translated that gets over to English speakers like me of the Sirah and the Prophet's life, is that, hey, the Masjid is a place where things were decided. It wasn't a place where there was just religious ritual. It was a thing, it was like the sacred circle of the elders in any traditional community. There's a group of elders, they sit on the inner circle, and then everybody sits back behind. And you have to be at least 40 years old to get yourself a voice in the circle, at least. And usually it's the elders who actually do most of the talking. And even those who are 40 and above, they have to wait until they've been addressed. And if you're under that age, you haven't proven yourself, you haven't killed your lion yet, so you don't deserve to speak. You see, it's kind of like that. And so we have to kill the lion of the nafs, you see, in order to get into that position where, hey, we're considered to be somewhat of a respectable and honorable and trustworthy authority, which brings us to the prophet himself. Hey, everyone trusted him, even his enemies, you see. So you can't trust false propaganda, but everyone has come to do that. The whole world has misplaced their trust in this whole business of COVID right now. And this is one of the greatest lies ever brought upon the face of mankind. Now, so I'm suspicious of the fact that over a period of 2 or 3 generations, this gathering at the masjid finally conformed to, after 200 years, to a qibla, which did not approach the way to Allah, but did approach Mecca. You see. You see, those first 200 years, there was no sort of standard qibla. Some had the corners facing east, some south, some north. The geological findings, or the archaeological findings all determine this now. This is the truth. I'm speaking the truth now, gentlemen. So listen carefully. If they couldn't agree on a Qibla, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of other stuff they couldn't agree on because maybe they killed most of the people who did agree on the truth along the way. You see, I'm thinking that. But if you're going to replace the truth, then you can only replace it with a lie. And if you're going to have a lie, if you don't have radio and hand phones and television, you got to have a place to disseminate the lie. And that might as well be the sacred circle. So it's been infiltrated, you see, and the wrong elders are up there giving out the wrong information. So I'm suspecting that this masjid idea was usurped, and then part of this usurpation was the purpose of disseminating the lie. And the lies have come to us now as tradition. So, what I'd like to do is ask you, what is your impression, okay, of the masjid to begin with? All right. What is it in Arabic? What does it mean? How is it represented in Al Quran? How is it represented in the traditions that have come to us? And how has this gathering where there was no segregation between the social levels, let alone the genders. How has this gathering come to be what it is today? You see, where the women can't speak and they have to sit in the back. But I thought the Quran says they're kind of equal partners with the men. So something happened here along the way, Brother Ayub. Can you help us to erase these and give us a closer look at what the truth actually may have been on the ground, in
All
Medina when this thing started to happen from the
okay.
very beginning,
Dr.
inshallah.
O, let me give you my take on this. All right.
Please,
I just hope I'm clear enough. Okay, I've been through the Madina Constitution, and there are one or two points that I want to highlight. But then I also want to throw the cat amongst the pigeon to get the people to
okay.
start thinking. All right. So let's have a look at this. Uh, if you take the Constitution, I'm going to read out clauses from the Constitution at random.
Please.
So going through each one is going to take a long, long time.
Oh,
So
yes.
let us begin with number one. The non-Muslims shall be considered a community along with the Muslims.
Mm,
They shall be guaranteed the right of religious freedom along with the Muslims. The right shall be conferred on their associates as well as themselves, except those who are guilty of oppression or the violators of the treaties. They will only bring transgression upon themselves. Non Muslim members have equal political and cultural rights as Muslims. They will have autonomy and freedom of religion. So let's just stop there. So Prophet Muhammad went to Medina, and there were lots of types of people. Okay, there were those who went with him, right, who made the hijrah, and then
mm,
there were people in Medina, the Medinites, and then you had Jews over there, you had Christians over there, and of course you had pagans amongst them.
mm.
And the Prophet had to govern all these people. So the only right thing to do was to create a constitution. Now we must remember that he had to create a constitution. The Quran was not yet completely revealed. Revelation was still coming in stages. But the point I want to address here when he talks about religious freedom, right? This constitution is granting religious freedom to non-Muslims and Muslims as well.
Mhm.
So when we look at the definition of non-Muslims and Muslims, based on this constitution, even based according to the Quran, our definition of Muslim and our definition of non-Muslim is completely flawed.
Yes.
I know traditional Muslims are not going to like this, but their definition, which I was brought up with, is actually a wrong definition.
Mhm.
And if people want clarity on this, they can watch my video. I think it's QIM 015. So let me state this. So another clause is a Muslim who believes in God and in the year after. So why will the constitution read? And remember, this constitution was authorized by our prophet, by Prophet Muhammad. And
Mm.
he's authorizing a Muslim who believes in God and the year after, which means that there were Muslims there who did not believe in God and the year after.
Of
That
course.
is why it's been put into this clause. So now
Mm.
we ask ourselves, what is the definition of a Muslim? You see,
Yes.
by virtue of the fact that's given in the Quran,
Mm.
the simple definition of a Muslim, and of course people will disagree with me, especially
Mhm.
traditional Muslims. A Muslim is one who brings peace or one who takes peace. In short, a Muslim is an ambassador of peace. That
Mhm.
is a Muslim. So there were
Mhm.
people in Medina who wanted peace. So when they approached the Prophet and told the Prophet to come and govern Medina so that it brings peace, they were a
Mhm.
peaceful people. They wanted peace. So they were already Muslims. But they didn't believe in God, neither did they believe in the hereafter. But they were Muslims.
Yes.
Right. So the other part now is about religious freedom. Now,
Mm.
coming back to this masjid story,
Yes.
you see, the masjids we have today in the world, right?
Mm.
Uh, for better choice of words, to me, they are prayer clubhouses. They're not masjids. It's that you go there, you perform a ritual, and then you walk out of the mosque, and that's it.
Mm. Mm.
What do you gain out of it? What do you benefit out of it? What does the next person benefit out of it? That is not social reform. Okay,
Mm.
that is basically a ritual prayer. But
Mm.
here's the point that bugs me a lot.
Mhm.
You know, before Prophet Muhammad came to Medina, he was already given what they say is salah because he went up on Miraj. You know, he
Mhm.
went up on Miraj and there he was
Yes.
given the salah.
Mhm.
To me, this whole thing is a fabrication. I'll tell you why.
Mm.
If that what was given is salah, actually it's not salah. Whatever was given, it was
Mhm.
definitely not salah, it was namaz. So when they came to Medina, while everybody had religious freedom, my question to the general Muslim population,
Mhm.
how come the first draft of the Medina constitution doesn't mention a masjid? It's not
Yes.
there. Go through the whole constitution. I challenge anybody, go through the constitution and show me the word mosque or masjid in the Medina constitution. It does not
Mhm.
exist. So
Mm.
that wasn't the priority of Prophet Muhammad to build a masjid.
Mm.
So what you mentioned earlier, Dr. O, you are 100% correct. It's the people would
Mm.
sit maybe in the Prophet's house and they would have a discussion, a place of meeting. That is exactly what transpired. There was no hurry in
Mm.
building a mosque.
Mhm.
If if namaz is so important as our scholars make it out to be, then the first thing the Prophet would have done is build a mosque.
Mhm.
That is what he would have done. But he didn't build a mosque. You go to this constitution. So I read you one or two clauses. Now I want to read you something else. So the security of God is equal for all groups. Furthermore, all communities shall be constitutionally subjected to the state. It shall be incumbent upon the non Muslims to observe and to adhere to the peace treaty they are invited to participate in. Likewise, it shall also be incumbent upon the Muslims to observe and adhere to any peace treaty they are invited to.
Mhm.
The Muslims and the non Muslims shall be jointly responsible to defend the state of Medina against any outside attack.
Mm.
Now, when we look at this, and I look at the definition of Salah in the Quran, the Prophet in this constitution is establishing Salah, not Namaz. All these clauses are constituents for peace.
Yes.
That is, all these
Yes.
clauses, it is constitution for progress.
Mhm.
That is what it is. So, how these people made Salah into a ritual namaz beats me. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Mhm.
So, what they have is basically a fabrication because even the Medina constitution does not carry weight for it anymore. It's not there.
Mm.
So, it's
Mhm.
just a mindless ritual which people, like you mentioned, it takes 3 generations. It must
Mhm.
have taken 3 to 4 generations, right?
Yes.
And those who had the
Mm.
voice started a fabrication in the name of Salah, but actually it is namaz. So when I
Ah.
go to this constitution, I find
Mhm.
all these clauses are constituents of Salah. That is what it does. Because
Mhm.
Salah is not something that you go to the mosque and you go in up and down positions, whatever it is, whether you call it ruku, sujud, or whatever it is. It does nothing to help the next person. But when you look at the Madina constitution, every clause is to help the next person. Every
Yes.
clause is to help the next person.
Mhm.
This is Salah. This is Salah.
Ah. Mhm.
So when a lot of people write to me and they insist I must tell them what salah is. I must tell them what salah is. Yes, I
Hmm.
will tell them what salah is. But if I don't tell them what salah is not, will it make sense me telling them what salah is?
Yes, of course.
So the first
Hmm.
thing I have to show them is that namaz is not salah. And
Hmm.
once I do that, then I can show them what salah is in the Quran.
Hmm.
So looking at the Madina Constitution, there's so much more uh, to that to read in this Constitution that it becomes mind-boggling. A Muslim
Yes.
who believes in a Muslim who believes in God and in the hereafter and agrees to the contents of this document. Which document? Madina Constitution.
Yes.
This document. All right. Shall not shall not provide or concession to those engaged in mischief, subversion against this constitution. Now, if you look at this constitution, Dr. O, and you look at our practices, I'm talking about traditional Muslim practices, they
Hmm.
will violate every clause in this constitution. Seriously, I mean
Oh.
it. You go
Oh.
to this constitution, they will
Hmm.
violate every clause in this constitution. And I challenge them
Hmm.
to show me one clause that they adhere to.
Hmm.
One clause, let
Hmm.
alone two clause or 10 clause. I mean,
Hmm.
a Muslim is one who's supposed to carry peace.
Yes.
That is what a Muslim is, irrespective of your religion. Yesterday I did a recording on uh, uh, Surah 2, verse 208. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu. Where Allah is telling the people who are secured that they should enter Islam wholeheartedly. Not
Hmm.
Islam as a religion, but Islam as a state of being.
Hmm.
So, we as Muslims, we have to enter a peaceful state. We
Hmm.
can't go into a community and start creating problems. That
Hmm.
was not the purpose of the Prophet. So, looking at this Madina constitution, you will find it's all about peace, peace, peace. Although there's violence mentioned,
Of
but
course. Hmm.
it still brings out peace. For example, verily, whoever goes out on a military expedition shall be provided with security, and whoever stays in Medina shall have likewise, except those who commit oppression and violate the contents of this constitution. So even
Hmm.
when you go out on military, it's for a purpose. It's to maintain the peace in Medina,
Yes. Hmm.
not for any other reason. So there's another clause which says that the valley of Medina, Yathrib, is sacred, and there shall be prohibition of fighting and bloodshed amongst the various communities of the state.
Hmm.
Again, you're looking at peace. So all those
Hmm.
people that were there, they wanted peace. And they would fight
Hmm.
for the peace because this is what the Prophet Muhammad is granting them, a concession for peace. He has arbitrated the matter. And he said, this is what I
Hmm.
need from you all. And provided you can abide by this constitution, we shall have peace. And that is exactly
Hmm.
what he gave them.
Hmm.
You see, I mean, if you take today's scenario, uh, I don't believe this. A person wears a jacket, and he's wrapped up with dynamite or bomb, whatever it is, and then he goes
Hmm.
middle of the street and he shouts Allah Akbar and blows himself up. That is not a Muslim. He is by
Hmm.
far from being a Muslim. Right?
Yes.
That is a troublemaker. That is a mischief maker,
A mischief
not a
maker. Yes.
jihadist.
Hmm.
Yes, mischief maker. That is not a jihadist. So,
Hmm.
looking at the Madina constitution, it ties up so well with the Quran. And then when we look at the practices of the traditional Muslims, you know, uh, really, I am so glad I'm out of that, you know,
Hmm. Yes.
being a traditional Muslim, because I would probably perpetrate the same junk.
Hmm.
So I am better off now. Although everybody here in Durban has ostracized me, but I'm at peace with myself.
Yes. A peace.
This is me.
Yes.
All right, okay. Go ahead.
Mhm.
I know you want to
Yes.
say something. Please do.
No, 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 no. I'm agreeing with you. Being
Okay,
at
all right.
peace with yourself. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall
Yes,
see
yes, yes,
God.
yes.
Okay, so this is some, and I'm sure you know that scripture. Everybody thinks this is about just going in the community like this, but no. In order, if you're going to be a peacemaker in the community, you've got to take that dean into the street first. After experiencing it yourself. So it's an individual thing. So you make peace with Allah yourself.
Of
You
course, most
see.
definitely. I mean, people are writing to me and they want to know what is Salah. If you study the Medina Constitution, you will get an idea of what Salah is.
Hmm.
Most definitely, you will, because you are trying to maintain and uphold peace, not for yourself, but for the benefit of others. That is Salah.
And that requires relationship.
Yes. So just to give you a little bit on Salah, I'm not going to go into
Please.
detail. I'm not going to go into
Mhm.
detail, but you see I think the most convenient definition of Salah is the most convenient definition of Salah would be okay. Let's go back to the Prophet Moses. He
Mhm.
also established Salah. The Prophet Jesus established Salah, and our Prophet Muhammad established Salah.
Mhm.
But now, the salah that the Prophet Moses was establishing was the same that Jesus established, was the same that Muhammad established. They did not have the rituals of going up and down in a masjid.
Mhm.
So, if you can recall the tent of the tabernacle and the tent of the meeting, time of Prophet Moses, and
Mhm.
then Jesus Christ was given the communion, which the people changed to the Holy Communion, whereby
Mhm.
they eating the body of Jesus and drinking his blood, drinking wine, symbolically,
Mhm.
of course, you
Yes,
know.
of course. Mhm.
Then then symbolically that they are cannibals, if
Mhm.
you know what I mean. So now we have Prophet Muhammad on the scene, and he is given the same salah. And here's the scary part about this. Everybody
Mhm.
wants to know what is salah, and I will
Mhm.
tell them shortly in about third or fourth week. My video is coming out.
Mhm.
90% of the Sunni Muslims will not be able to practice Salah. They will
Mhm.
never be able to practice it. I know that because Allah says that majority will be in the wrong. Why will they find it so difficult to practice Salah? Do you really want to know?
Yeah,
It's
of
because they
course.
can't stop telling lies. They can't
Yes.
stop telling lies because their
Yes.
lies are so full of lies. I mean, they are reading Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim in the namaz,
Mhm.
asking, "Oh my Lord, show me the straight path." So you're
Mhm.
asking God to guide you to the straight path, but then you go read somebody else's book. How do you expect to get guidance? So who are they lying to? They're lying to
Mhm.
themselves. That is why
Mhm.
these are people who won't be able to establish salah. They can't.
Yes. Mhm.
So when we look at the word salah in the Quran, it appears 99 times in four derived forms. Now,
Mhm.
four derived form is very important. One is the communion, other is the communication, but I will definitely break it up. But this constitution, every clause in this constitution is a constituent of salah. This is what the
Mhm.
people need to understand. So when my people ask me now about what salah is, I'll tell them go and read the Madina constitution first, but I
Mhm.
will definitely tell them. Everybody is waiting to know what salah is. And I will definitely
Mhm.
tell them, but I need some time to prepare my notes.
Of course, of course. And I don't want to presuppose anything here.
All right.
In order, I don't. I want to avoid interfering with anything that you're doing here. I'm
All
looking
right.
forward to that. Salat, as far as I understand, and I don't need you to comment on this, is an establishment of a relationship based on some form of covenant. Okay, so the covenant is one
You are
where,
saying exactly the same thing that's in my notes.
oh
That is
gosh,
that is communion.
I just told you I was going to avoid that.
No, but that is what you just did. You see, uh, Christians are eating the body of Christ and drinking His blood, and they say that
Yes,
is symbolically.
yes.
Now, when we look at the Quran, our ulama and our scholars tell us that we must follow the Sunnah of the Prophet.
Mm,
Unfortunately, the word Sunnatullah appears 11 times in the Quran. No, 11 or 12 times in the Quran. But the word
mm,
Sunnatul Nabi does not appear in the Quran.
mhm,
Never does.
mm,
So why would my ulama and my Islamic scholars ask me to follow Sunnatul Nabi when
mhm,
Allah is telling you to follow His Sunnah, Sunnatullah?
yes.
So
Mhm,
even when you follow Sunnatullah, then you will understand what communion is, and you've just defined it. You've just
mhm.
defined it.
Yeah, it's a
It's
relationship based on some sort of a covenant that honors truth, and this honors
yes.
the dignity of each individual, which is based on meeting their needs, not their desires, but their
Ah,
needs.
yes. 100% correct, Doctor. Oh, 100% correct.
Hmm.
So, inshallah, in the near future, I just got one or two more videos to do, and then I want to do the one on Salah.
Very good. Excellent.
I'd rather give it
Excellent.
to them. Whether they
Yes.
practice it, it's not something easy to
Hmm.
practice because you got to be conscious of Allah all the time.
Yes.
sunnatullah. You have to
Mm-hmm.
practice his attributes. That is
Mm-hmm.
what it boils down to. So there's another point that I wanted to speak about uh, on this.
The
Okay, now,
Constitution. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
the Constitution.
Yes.
So the peace granted by the believers shall be one. So this is talking about those who believe in the Prophet shall be one.
Mm-hmm.
If there is any war in the way of Allah, right? No Muslim shall make any treaty of peace with the enemy apart from other Muslims, unless that is based on equality and fairness amongst all. Can you
Mm-hmm.
see how this benefits others as well? It's
Mm-hmm.
not for only one group of people. So it could
No.
have been the Madinas go and sign a peace treaty for themselves, leaving everybody else
Mm-hmm.
out. Because
Mm-hmm.
this clause in the Constitution guarantees
Mm-hmm.
everybody peace,
Yeah.
even if they're doing
Mm-hmm.
it on their own. But it's got to encompass everybody. So
Mm-hmm.
when you look at this Constitution, you know, uh, I've got something else written here now. I want to read this to you. Uh, all right, listen to this.
Yes.
Okay, you know this, what I'm reading now.
Mm-hmm.
We, the people of the United States, in
Oh
order to
yes.
form a more perfect union, establish
Mm-hmm.
justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do
Mm-hmm.
ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.
Yes.
How far is that from the Constitution of Madina?
Well, that's they're
How
almost.
far is that? It's not
It's
far.
almost. It's hand in glove. Yeah.
Yes, that's my point. That's my point.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
only problem is that what happened to the Arabs was totally sad. You see,
Mm-hmm.
when we look at how Islam expanded into its golden age,
Yes.
when Baghdad was a capital, and Islam really progressed, scientifically, technologically, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
was, but they were the forerunners, of learning. They were the
Yes.
forerunners of science. They were the forerunners of everything.
Yes.
And they were worried about being overthrown. They were more worried about themselves. So they
Mm-hmm.
kept it to themselves. I mean, if you
Mm-hmm.
look at Arabia, if they did what the United States did, they would have been a superpower today. It's just that they
Mm-hmm.
didn't want non-Arabs in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter how educated the person was, doesn't matter how much he could have contributed to the ummah. They refused
Mm-hmm.
that person in the country.
Yes.
There is
Mm-hmm.
no way he could have got Arabian citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike
Yes.
you look at the United States, they absorbed all the intellectual property from everybody. They took
Yes.
it in.
Yes.
That
Mm-hmm.
is what they did. And this is exactly what we should have been doing. But unfortunately, we are more worried about our racial divide and tribal divide rather than
Yes.
progress of humanity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, then, that brings us to another point. Okay, so
All
we've
right.
discussed a bit about the Constitution, the basic uh, meeting of the needs, the basic meeting of human needs via the Constitution in a disparate sort of situation where you have so many different factions. They've got to come together and agree on keeping the peace. And anyone who goes against that is sort of an act of treason. Okay, so we got the Masjid, we got the Constitution. What is this thing called Jum'ah?
Juma, assembly.
Yes, yes,
Assembly. Yeah, but
yes,
now we have what is called the day of assembly.
yes.
Um, okay, Dr. O, this is a long subject.
I'm sure. I'm
This is a long
sure.
subject. Um, why don't we postpone this for another day?
Okay.
You know
Okay.
why?
Why?
Uh, there's few things that I need to outline about Juma from the
Uh-huh.
Quran for us to understand it.
Okay. Very good.
All
And I
right.
don't want to. I don't want to overtax you here. Anyway, because I realize you've just come out of hospital
That's
not
right.
too long ago, and I want to encourage everyone to support you as well in your present state. May Allah keep you with us as long as possible, because
How is possible? Yeah.
this
This
exuberance, this
this
young
has to come right. No, this
yes,
my
this
the only thing. I
Zaid,
mean, my chest has cleared up.
yes,
It was an infection that I picked up,
yes, yes.
and that brought my oxygen levels right down, and then I had
Yeah,
to
I'm
be rushed
sure
to
it did.
hospital.
Yeah.
So, but everything here is fine. Just my
Ah,
voice. just my
Yes.
voice.
Well, I'm hoping that we can keep your young stallion exuberance with us for many years to come, inshallah.
Inshallah, inshallah.
Because you see, there's a definite plan at work here. It's some sort of metaphysical scheme that I see evidence for and the signs of over the years in this sort of coalescence of old fellas like yourself and me and a few other the young next generation coming up behind us. They're really getting actively involved in picking this thing up. They're going to carry it further than either you or I are capable of doing, inshallah.
Oh, most definitely.
Yes, but the important thing is that we keep the dialogue going, we keep the narrative alive because, hey, this is also propaganda. But the difference is we're promoting the truth. Here's the truth. Here's the truth. Now, you go and decide for yourself. If you want to really establish this thing, we're saying to the listeners, uh, do your own research, look it up, see if we're lying, prove us to be liars. And everyone who's so far has tried to prove me to be a liar hasn't done it from the Quran. They've done it from the Hadith. You see.
Absolutely.
That's their only that they don't have any alternative other than to run back to the hadith, or when if they do try to approach an argument from the Quran, they only use the mistranslations, you see.
Of
And
course.
I find this very shameful. I find it shameful, especially amongst people who are supposed to be Arabists. They're supposed to understand this language. And my good wife was married to an Arab gentleman a few years back, and he was the son of a Jordanian big shot in the ulama, and a judge in out of Jordan someplace. In any case, she told me that he was occasionally he would pick up the Quran and read it, and she caught him at the breakfast or coffee table one time reading the Quran, and he said, "Oh, he's reading a translation." Not, he said, "No, that's wrong. My God, that's a mistranslation." He's going through it, and he's
Yeah.
speaking. He's talking to himself, and he doesn't know that she's observing him. You see, because he's in
Mm.
back behind the kitchen, doing what women are supposed to do. You see, but she's listening to him, and here's a son of a very well-known and well-respected Islamic scholar out of Jordan, saying this is a mistranslation. It's a mistranslation. No, that's not what it says at all. So if he knows it, and he's for all intents and purposes not associated with the ulama, he's just a businessman. Okay, and so he's one of these guys. If he goes to Juma on Friday, he goes to be seen. You see, and to make the connections. It's what
Okay.
needs to be done. And he's reading through this thing, and he knows the language. His father taught him well. So he knows the language, and of course, up to a certain point, he's probably just reading the Arabic. But one day he picks up this translation into English. He said, "No, that's not what it means. No, that's wrong. No, no." So what I'm saying is, this is shameful. If he, the son of a scholar, so knows this and can just sit down over a cup of coffee and read a few lines or a few pages and see all the errors, what about these scholars, dear brother? This is shameful. What are they just holding their tongues? Are they biting their tongues, or are they trying to hide behind this smoke screen that we're trying to erase? What's going on here?
Well, I think they are hiding behind this smoke screen which they created for themselves.
Ah,
But I think your job and my job is to clear the pathway for the next generation. That is
yes,
what we have to do.
yes,
And, you know, I pray that hopefully people from the next generation pick up from where we left and run with it.
yes, yes. Well, I see evidence of that taking place now. I see evidence of that taking place in my own students. They're saying,
Mm.
"What about this?" or "What do you think of this?" And they're taking these things a step further. And not only that, but they're beginning to associate the Quranic perspective with the scientific perspective.
Of
You see,
course, of course.
so this is what the early Muslims were doing, those who led to the so called Golden Age, those who had the freedom to do it. if you had the state sponsoring a scholar who was a mathematician or a scientific expert in any field, even seen, I don't care who they are, they made tremendous advances during that time. And I'm beginning to see evidence of this taking place in my own students over a period of time here. Now, I'm just been involved in this and actively involved in, publishing my own books and everything for about 15 years or more right now. But I see, I see faithful students, you see, who are over the years. Sometimes I don't hear from them for 2, 3, 4 years, and all of a sudden, whoosh, they appear. It's kind of like the genie rubbed the lamp. They come out of the lamp and whoosh, they're there, and they've transformed, and there's something wonderful, magnificent. This evolution of the human spirit is wonderful for a teacher to see that in their students. So I think this is happening, brother, and I pray to Allah that we continue to take part in this. I guess
Yes,
we can call it
sure. Um,
revision, you see, for as long as possible. Yes.
Today is the 23rd.
Hmm.
So when do we meet again?
We could meet again next week if you'd like, but I don't want to
That's fine.
overtax you. Every 2 weeks is fine or so, some
All right.
thereabouts, give or
So
take,
we'll meet on
whatever
the
is
6th.
possible.
We'll meet on the
Hmm.
6th. Today is the
Okay.
23rd, am I right?
Let's see.
20th.
20th, yes.
20th. So we'll meet on the 4th. 4th of
Hmm.
October.
Yes, yes, that
All
would
right.
be wonderful. Okay, if we can set a rhythm, a pattern here, then that also that helps us. It helps the seasons. It gives the angels time to, go wherever they got to go, and then come back and say, "Well, okay, let's give them this."
Yeah, no, it will be it'll be better if I interact with you. It makes life much more easier for me. I mean, for me to
uh,
sit and then do a script and then record that and
yes,
push it out there, it's
yes,
hard work. It's much more
yes,
easier
it
for me
is.
to talk to you.
Well, if you would like to do it weekly, that's fine with me, as long as
Let's
yeah, as
let's
long as
keep it
my
every
my
2 weeks.
wife is available to
No,
back
no,
us
no.
up. No, every 2 weeks is okay.
Every 2 weeks is fine.
Very good then,
Okay.
because that I think that's a nice, safe sort of sine wave,
Yeah.
pattern, and then everybody can get used to that, including ourselves. So, inshallah, we'll meet again in 2 weeks, and
Inshallah.
with that being said, let me just sign off here. But please stay
All right.
online for just a minute. I'm going to turn the
All right.
recording off in just a minute. So, wassalamu alaikum to our listeners, and
Wa
we'll
alaikum
see you again
salam.
next time in 2 weeks.